Hey, Hawkeye fans. Chad Leistikow of the Des Moines Register. Eventful Saturday at Kinnick Stadium. It was the kids' day at Kinnick Scrimmage. And Tyler Tachman joined me for the first time at Kinnick Stadium, right? I mean, inside the facility to see some Hawkeye football. We got a ton to discuss today. We are also going to recap Iowa Football Media Day, which was yesterday. But certainly, Tyler, no time for small talk when QB1 gets hurt. So let's jump right into it. And I'm sure this will probably take a little bit, but I wrote it down. 1:17 p.m. Was the time of Cade McNamara's crumpling to the Duke Slater Field field turf. And honestly, the, the practice, I mean, honestly, the notes I took the rest of the scrimmage were just not really important because anything we talked about, if he had been seriously hurt, would have been pretty moot. I mean, I'm not saying the season would have been over, but it was a scary moment. We'll get to the specific updates, but you were on the field during this whole deal and posted a video. We haven't really got a chance to talk. We've been writing stories, posting videos. So give me your sense of kind of 1:17 p.m. and the aftermath.
You're really, man, that time is really kind of adding a dramatic effect to everything here. Well, also first I gotta say, apologies for people watching this or watching this. My hair is kind of crazy. I was wearing a bucket hat, so I didn't get totally fried today. But if you're listening to the podcast version, I'm glad that you're listening to it and not watching. But so basically the play, it was kind of just an awkward play. Like Cade scrambled and got past the line of scrimmage and then just kind of like looked like he lost his balance and kind of did like a little belly flop forward, like kind of slid forward. And it was probably one of those plays where in a setting like this, you wish that he would have they just ended the play or he wouldn't even run because there's not like they weren't going to hit him anyway. So it wasn't like it was like necessary for him to do that. But at the same time, like he's trying to prepare for the season. And I'm sure he's probably not really thinking about that like mid play, like, okay, like let's pull up because he's a competitor and a competitive guy. So it was just kind of one of those awkward kind of plays. And so, I mean, he was up on his own power. It wasn't like he was,
Right.
holding and rocking back on his knee or anything. Like he walked off. So then he came back, a handful of minutes later after going into the tunnel, didn't have pads
It was a
on.
while. It was a
Yeah.
while, but yeah,
But
a long wait.
he came back, or it at least felt longer than
Yeah.
probably it was,
Yeah.
but came back without shoulder pads on, and he seemed like he was in decent spirits, like he was walking fine. There wasn't anything like visually you could tell like was wrong. So I
Yeah.
don't know if
No
you want
ice.
to add more to that, but
Yeah. No ice packs around his knee. Obviously, this thing isn't televised. It's not on. There's not a live stream that I know of, unless there's a bootleg out there. Anybody bootlegging this Kids Day scrimmage in 2023? I don't know.
I don't.
But
Well, I guess my videos were probably the closest to a bootleg, but
but so it was a little bit interesting. You just sort of write down notes and the play by play what happened. So Cade gets up, he kind of motions, "Hey, I got to come out," and then Deacon Hill goes in. He talks to the trainer, and then they make the slow walk to the tunnel, and then it's just like, okay, Joe Labus is already out. Deacon Hill, he's the number 2, but you don't want the whole season with Deacon Hill. No offense to him. Uh, so it was It was a lot of fans were very nervous, and it was the same right knee that Cade McNamara had surgically repaired. At least, like he went down like right at the Tiger Hawk. Okay, so his right knee was like black from the turf mark or whatever. So it was clearly the right side that was bothering him, and that was the knee he got surgically repaired. So non-contact injury, you see these things all the time. Um, and one, I got a little update from our friend Dargan. Is It's just scary because you've seen innocent looking injuries turn into ACLs or whatever, And McNamara had the surgery in November, didn't do any 11 on 11 in spring. So he's been waiting 9 months to go 11 on 11. In fact, longer because he only played through week 3 at Michigan. So he really hasn't even been out there for like 11 months and 11 on 11. So the update, let's get to the update. But I'm just kind of describing like all the things that are running through everyone's head and our heads too, because as reporters, I mean, I was on a 4:00 deadline today. It was like pushing 2:00. He's not out there yet. We only get Kirk Ferentz after practice, so it was a little bit harrowing, I would say. And then our producer, colleague on the Hawkeye Beat, Dargan Southern, said someone mentioned that FanDuel took Iowa's season win totals down during that time. That's how scary the situation was for the sports books too. It's like they don't want people just hammering the under 8.5 because they're not winning 8.5. I don't think with Deacon Hill. So let me read some quotes from Kirk Ferentz. Just obviously you can tell it's not major because we would have led with that, but he said that it's unfortunate. Obviously, he needs to work like everyone out here needs work, but hopefully nothing too serious. Anytime anybody goes down, that's the worst part of football. And then he said it's not structural, as far as I know. And that was basically the update. Soft tissue, muscular, not the knee. He said it was above the knee, so I'm guessing, Tyler, we're talking about a quad strain, quad pull. Day to day was kind of the classification. Last quote here from Kirk is he's not happy because he doesn't want to miss time. He doesn't like not playing. He doesn't like not practicing. I just told him injuries are part of the game. It stinks, but my guess is he'll wear the training staff out the next couple of days or whatever it takes. I'll know more next week, but I'm not alarmed. So give me your takeaway from what Kirk Ferentz said and, how fans maybe should be feeling right now.
Yeah, it felt like kind of like a roller coaster of an hour, hour and a half or 2 hours. But I mean, based on what I saw and what Kirk Ferentz said, and I don't want to speak on this saying like this is concrete, but it didn't look too like concerning. Like if it was really bad, you would think that he wouldn't have come back onto the field. Like he came back onto the field. He was talking with Joe Evans. Like it seemed like he was in okay spirits. He was walking around fine. It didn't there's not really any indications that this is something major, and obviously injuries are injuries and things can change, but I feel like based on everything we've seen and based on everything we've heard, like it's fine, or he will be fine, I guess. And I guess if you also look at it from the fact that like if it is something more minor, he still has so the first game is 3 weeks. Like if it's something minor, he still has a handful of weeks to rest, or if he needs to take a week, he can, it's not like they're playing tomorrow. So obviously 3 weeks isn't a lot of time, but it is, if it's something minor, then that is an all right amount of time for you to kind of just wait things out.
Sure. And let's get into, well, I guess the time frame. Yeah, I would think there's a very low chance that he's going to practice this week. I'd be surprised. This is not a time of year where Kirk Ferentz rushes guys back. They want to get guys to September 1st. And I'm sure this will, slow down the timetable. But at the same time, he needs to be out there. I mean, he's learning a new offense. Guys are still developing rapport with him. He didn't have that time with even Seth Anderson in the spring, who we're going to talk about, and Caleb Brown in the spring. Those guys weren't available or here. So really, he doesn't have a lot of experience with guys outside of the tight ends, outside of the walk-ons, and maybe Deontay Vines, because Nico Regaini was also hurt in the spring. So, and Regaini was out today. So again, it's a little concerning, but it's not alarming, as Kirk Ferentz said. I feel confident that Cade McNamara will start week 1 against Utah State. And that's a good headline coming out of Kids Day. At 117, that would have been a very welcome headline. And by about 217 or so, that's when Kirk Ferentz at least reassured us that it was going to be okay. Let's get into what McNamara did on the field today. Tyler. Before I get into it, I mean, I took a lot of notes up in the press box. You were down on the field doing the videos. I encourage folks to check out his composite clips from Kids Day, already up on Hawk Central. My column on the thoughts of the day are also up on Hawk Central. What were your impressions before I get into what I thought about Cade and the offense while he was out there?
I thought, well, first, I guess what makes this more complicated is that it's hard to know if Iowa's defense is like a top 5 defense in the country, then it's like, how do you judge Iowa's offense because they might be playing one of the best defenses in the country? So just keep that in mind, I guess. But I'll start by saying I think the offensive line and offense, I think they look better than last season, but I think at least I felt like there was still room for growth. It felt like the defensive line was getting a lot of pressure in the backfield, and that's kind of how, if I recall correctly, like that's how when Cade McNamara started out, like the first drive or so was like that, where he just didn't have a whole lot of time. There was a lot of pressure. It seemed like the offensive line was a little bit shaky. But there were, I think, as it went on, there were some nice flashes. One guy that really stood out, I thought, was Seth Anderson, the Charleston Southern transfer at receiver. He had a touchdown catch that Cade McNamara kind of fit in a little window, and he did a good job of holding on to it. Then there was a couple deeper balls that Cade McNamara threw. So I think that overall, you can say that it's better than last year from what I have seen. And obviously this is a smaller sample size. I think it's better than last year. I think it's far from perfect and there's still a lot of room to grow, but there were some kind of little encouraging flashes that we saw over, the course that Cade was playing. So I don't know what your kind of sound off on that, but that's kind of how I felt it was.
Yeah, good context. You always got to bring up that Iowa's defense, is out there. No Cooper DeJean, though. That was one notable name missing from the defense. Just so people know before we forget, sounds like good chance he'll be back to practice this week. Soft tissue thing. If you check out my video with him from Hawk Central yesterday from Media Day, he talked about he feels healthy. He does it. It did not seem like this was anything to worry about. So, but anyway, the rest of the defense was out there. I mean, Jamari Harris was out there. He picked off Cade McNamara. Who was the other person that picked him off? It was I got
Deshaun. Was it Deshaun Lee?
No, Lee picked off Hill both times. It was TJ Hall. TJ Hall had the other one off the Eric All deflection. That was not Cade's fault. It was a good throw on a short pass, and then All just couldn't hang on. And somebody jarred it loose, like while he was trying to kind of juggle it, and it kind of fell into TJ Hall's hands. So goes down as a pick, though. One thing I would say is Cade, I think, took some chances. That game manager label certainly wasn't there today. He wasn't going for the checkdowns for the most part, although he did have one nice check down to Seth Anderson. I think that went for 24 yards pretty early. Had a real nice laser of a pass to Caleb Brown for 20. I know fans will be excited to hear about that. That was on a 3rd and 8. Got him a first down. Caleb Brown points downfield. Fans are excited about that. Next pass, though, was picked off by Jamari Harris. So it was kind of like a little bit of an up and down. But certainly the two notable things for me were the deep shots. Back-to-back hits Anderson for 37 yards in double coverage. Perfect throw outside the hash, toward the sideline, not out of bounds. I mean, how many times have we seen, Spencer Petras or another Iowa quarterback overthrow that ball or just miss it? When a guy had a step, he was hitting him. And then the very next play, or I think it was the next play. Let's see. I'll look at my notes here. But Deontay Vines, 45 yards. Same thing, up the left sideline. Beat Jamari Harris this time. Unofficially, I had Cade going 6 for 13. For 139. So high yards per attempt, nearly 11 yards per attempt, but did have a lower percentage and the 2 interceptions. So that's very unofficial, though. So, don't take that to the bank. That's just my notes. And where they spot the ball is you can't ever tell, really, because they just bring the ball back to some other yard line and then they go. So overall, though, I mean, I think we saw good quarterback play. And as you mentioned, Tyler, first pass of the day was batted down by a defensive lineman. I think, to me, still pretty concerned. I know I'm encouraged by the offensive line that it's going to be better, but it wasn't great today. I thought Jennings Dunker was had some trouble at right tackle. Now Iowa has good defensive ends that were causing problems, and Aaron Graves was dominating today from the defensive side. I mean, Noah Shannon out. We're supposed to return to practice this week, but may miss several games with the gambling investigation or longer. So that was good to see Aaron Graves too, kind of dominating like you hoped he would, but that caused some of the pressure as well. I don't know. That was my thoughts.
Some other notes I had from an offensive standpoint, because that's probably what people want to hear about, is so who was mostly, at least it seemed like, running with the ones. So there was no Nico Ragaini today, but Deontay Vines and Seth Anderson were at wide receiver. And then Iowa was going with the two tight end sets with Luke Lachey on the line, and then Eric All, transfer from Michigan, spread out. And Kirk Ferentz said after the scrimmage that's something that they're going to utilize, is using both of those guys on the field at the same time, because he feels like those are two of their better players. So I think that's something interesting to kind of note and track. And also I'm encouraged, and I don't think this is too much of a surprise, but by Iowa's what they could be doing in the running game because of their running backs. And some of this will be relying on the offensive line, but I think LaShawn Williams and Caleb Johnson could be a really good tandem. And Kirk Ferentz said on Friday at media day that LaShawn Williams he thinks he's had the best camp that he has had since he's been at Iowa. And he's a guy that's like a really veteran presence that's been around for a while. And then obviously what Caleb Johnson did last season as a freshman, and LaShawn Williams on Saturdays today, he had a long or explosive touchdown run, I would call it. And Caleb Johnson didn't do anything too crazy. There was one play where it was kind of on the sideline coming toward me, and he made some dude, he just juked him out of his shoes. So I think when you hope that he is getting some more elusiveness, make guys miss ability coming into this season, that was kind of on display right there. So I think tight end and running backs are like, you expect Iowa to be good in the tight end department and the running back department, honestly. But I think that those are two position groups that have some depth and some talent that can really kind of help Cade McNamara and maybe take some pressure off of wide receivers and just be good tools for the offense.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad you brought up the running backs. Yeah, I think those two rooms right now are very strong. And even Kamari Moulton, true freshman, he showed some burst, in that fourth or fifth string, type of guy. And Kirk had good things to say about him, So Liddell Betts' room is really in good shape right now. And that's good, especially when you're, a little bit thin, obviously at quarterback, which we talked about. And I'm going to say, today was an encouraging day for me at wide receiver because I think Anderson showed me something today, Seth Anderson, and we've been hearing his name a little bit in camp. And Kirk did say that this was Anderson's best day. He made a joke like this. Maybe he likes it when the lights come on or with the fans here. Between Vines and Anderson and Regaini and then Caleb Brown, you can tell Caleb Brown is going to will become part of the plans at some point because I don't know if you watched him a lot, just even in the warm-up drills, but man, he's just smooth. He's a smooth athlete. He makes nice catches. I didn't see him drop anything. I feel like that is probably going to be your top four. There was no Alec Wick today. There was no Jack Johnson, who's in the gambling investigation. There wasn't a lot of walk-on usage. Jacob Bostic was out. Until you got deeper into the lineup. And in fact, I should give a shout out to two true freshmen who popped a little bit. Jarrett Bowie, number 84, right? I think he's 84. Yeah, he made a catch, and so did Dayton Howard, number 20. So those two guys who Kelton Copeland kind of identified at media day as the two true freshman receivers who are kind of raising some eyebrows. I feel like that is encouraging too. So I feel like the wide receiver room is, you just want it to be like you've said about the offense, Tyler. You just want it to be not bad, So if they can be average, and I thought we saw flashes today where guys were, getting open. That's encouraging to me. The line. Let's talk about the line now. I wrote about it out of media day. I think it's the biggest story of the whole team. Now this would have been the bigger story if Cade was hurt. I will say that, but if the line cannot come together, it's going to be a struggle. So let's talk about the line now. Right or left to right: Mason Richmond, Connor Colby, Logan Jones, Nick DeYoung, Jennings Dunker. That was your 5 today, and then Rusty Feth rotated in at left guard. So not really any much more deviation from the ones on the O-line today. Your thoughts?
Yeah, like I said before, I think it looked better than what I had seen from last season, but at the same time, there were seemed to be still some issues, and I will add too, that it seemed like Iowa was trying to maybe air it out a little bit more, like it wasn't as like uh strict about just their normal kind of schematic running, because in it I think that, and you were talking about Cade not being as much of a game manager, and I think if there's a time to kind of try stuff out and expand your boundaries a little bit, like this is the time to do it. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of when we talk about Seth Anderson and Caleb Brown and Cade McNamara, that a lot of that is going to be relying on what the offensive line does, and that unit is probably going to be the most important when it comes to Iowa's success this season. But yeah, I guess those are kind of my thoughts. I will also say I believe Deacon Jones, it seemed like he had some there were a couple of snaps, or he had trouble handling some snaps. I don't know if that was on Logan Jones but I don't know.
Yeah, Deacon Hill. Yeah, not Deacon
Oh,
Jones.
Deacon Hill. My fault.
But he did combine the center and quarterback there. So
There we go. That's what I was going for.
No, the center was actually Tyler Ellsbury when they had the exchange. Not to, again, we're not criticizing anybody, but it was the two line that had the center exchange issues. I thought Jones was fine on center exchanges as far as I could tell. But good. And the second line was not good. I mean, that you have to. There were some names on there that aren't going to play, and I'm not going to single anyone out, but especially on the edges, those guys just are not in the rotation. With Dajon Parker out at right tackle today, that depleted Iowa's depth at tackle, and then Bo Stevens played some as the backup right guard, but it seemed to me their top 6 was the 6 that was with the ones, and Dunker did not have a great day, I would say. So it makes you wonder if Nick DeYoung maybe has to pop out to right tackle. He's got experience there. They trust him a little bit more. We'll see. There's still time in camp to. It just sounded like from talking to Barnett yesterday that Dunker is a guy that thinks and overthinks a lot. So sometimes that's hard to shake, especially 3 weeks out. I think what Kirk Ferentz said today about Dunker, who we know is a physical phenom, is they're just trying to have him zero in at right tackle, which I think is smart because they have good guards right now between Feth, Colby. If DeYoung stays at guard, and then of course Stevens, they've got experience there, and Ellsbury, who is the backup center but can also be a guard. So they really need that right tackle spot to be solidified, and that's the one spot that really concerns me. And again, center, it's got to be good. They say Logan Jones is going to be good. Aaron Graves is a different animal, but they could not stop Aaron Graves today. So I'm going to just say kind of an average day for the line. And I don't know. One more thing on the line. It's in my article, but Mason Richmond played last season hurt. He got hurt in August. was not really disclosed that he was playing hurt all year before, and so you kind of chalk that up again as Iowa didn't have any better options at left tackle last year, and he was still probably their best lineman. And he had to play through it. Had a 4-month surgery, 4 months recovery from surgery, not a 4-month surgery. That'd be a tough surgery. 4 months, need a lot of IVs, but yeah, he's back and looked fine at left tackle.
Yeah, maybe if they could find a Deacon Jones, maybe like a little combination between Deacon Hill and Logan Jones, that would be someone good to plug in there. But little combination between them both. That's what I was looking for. But no, one of the other things, I guess moving on from O-line
Yeah, let's
quarterback
move on.
tandems, is one thing that actually that stood out to me a lot was Iowa's defensive cornerback specifically, and we touched on it a little bit. But that's already one of the departures that Iowa has to deal with this season. Riley Moss, a huge part of what they did the last few seasons, he's gone now, and the situation, I guess, was shaken up a little bit more because Cooper DeJean was out as well today, which, like you said, Kirk Ferentz is optimistic he'll be back in the near future, but that kind of opened the door to figure out like what is Iowa's cornerback depth look like. And I was really encouraged by that because Deshaun Lee had 2 picks and Jamari Harris had a pick, and Jamari Harris, I think, is expected to be the guy to play opposite of Cooper DeJean to start. And he had a pick. I said, he had a pick, but he made big plays in 2021, missed all of 2022, coming off of an injury now. It feels like he is going to be a real key because people are probably going to throw away from Cooper DeJean. So whoever's on that other side is going to see some action. But he had a pick. He looked good. He looked good out there. And it's not only that, but when you have someone like Deshaun Lee, TJ Hall, who also made plays as well on Saturday, is that if you think about what happened in the Nebraska game last season, you need depth at cornerback because Cooper DeJean went down in that game and Trey Palmer just torched Iowa in the secondary. So it's not just that, okay, is Jamari Harris going to be able to be the guy that's going to play opposite of Cooper DeJean? It's if someone else, if Cooper DeJean goes down, if Jamari Harris goes down, if they're out for some reason, who else can you plug in? And I think it was encouraging today that TJ Hall made plays, that Deshaun Lee made some really good plays. I thought he was impressive. So I think it's not only who's going to be the guy opposite of Cooper, but who are the 2 or 3 behind him as well that can just add depth if needed to be plugged in.
Yeah, and it wasn't a day where you noticed the safeties much at all, Xavier Wampa or Quinn Schulte. Maybe that was good because when you think about it, Luke Lachey didn't have a catch. Maybe they just weren't targeting the tight ends as much today, just trying to get those receivers involved. But nothing that stood out, but also nothing where they didn't, where it's like, oh gosh, that was a big mistake. So I would say solid safety play. And then they're good on, I think they're good with Castro at the cash. So starting to feel better about the secondary after today, I would say. I'm glad you brought that up between Deshaun Lee and TJ Hall. I mean, we've been hearing Deshaun Lee kind of creeping up on the depth chart. And if, Jamari Harris isn't ready or has to miss some time for any reason, you got to have TJ and Deshaun Lee. Those are pretty much the next 2. And then there's Devin Hilson and Brendan Diaz-Fernandez is probably your next 2 at corner. So, Diaz-Fernandez, I think, is doing a little bit more of the cash or star. So, they're developing some depth. And that was one of the storylines we've talked about on radio. They got to get depth in that secondary. You think it's going to happen with Phil Parker, but seems like it's happening. They feel good about it. And just talking to people like kind of on the side, off the record, there's just a really good vibe overall about this team. And that, just to kind of bring it all full circle here, Tyler, it's like, what can undo this thing? Gambling and quarterback getting hurt, right? So I know I wrote, we've talked enough about Cade, but let's get into the gambling, which you wrote about yesterday. Noah Shannon talked. I'll let you speak to it, but Kirk Ferentz is kind of moving ahead with the guys they got, right?
Yeah, I think admirably, Noah Shannon was just kind of like he's not gonna let this define him in any way, shape, or form. And the fact that he also didn't have to be out there talking, that he was willing to kind of he said that the media has been showed him respect, so he wanted to show respect back. And I thought that that was kind of a sign of leadership. But as he kind of goes through what I would assume is a difficult process for him, um, but yeah, I mean, it feels like, and this is kind of what I wrote about, that. Well, it's first off, it's been nice that we've kind of gone this entire time, first 30 minutes, without like mentioning the gambling, because it's felt like kind of it's loomed. It's felt like the last few months, and as it gets closer, and there's still no closer to the beginning of the season, and there's still no resolution, and in fact there's been more information kind of uncovered that has raised some red flags, that you wonder like how much of an impact could it actually have on the season. Like, and the thing that I look at too is like the margin for error this season is probably not going to be very big, and because it wasn't last season. You look at the games that Iowa barely beat South Dakota State in the opener. They lose by 3 to Iowa State. They lose by 3 to Illinois. They squeak past Minnesota. Like, these games are not like they're the margin for error. One misstep, one player gone, it can make a difference, and it can change where Iowa goes in the season. Like against Nebraska, all they need to do is beat Nebraska uh, to go to the Big Ten championship. Cooper DeJean gets hurt, just things shake up, and so that's why I say if Iowa does lose someone because of the gambling thing, or there's one day of practice that's thrown off because of just the all the extra noise or whatever, like the margin for error is small. So that's why it's just another variable that the team and the coaches have to deal with, along with everything else of trying to improve the offense and working in all these new pieces and getting the offensive line better and replacing Jack Campbell and Seth Benson and Riley Moss and Kayvon Merriweather. Like, it's another kind of variable that they're going to have to deal with as they try to get back to Indianapolis.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it does not, just for those wondering, you're like, well, how come Noah Shannon hasn't been in the DCI stuff? Well, he kind of basically said yesterday, and you can kind of extrapolate this, but he is not involved in a criminal investigation, and that's from his mouth. That's his understanding. He's not, criminally, he's not an investigation. It's in the NCAA's hands with Noah. I mean, he was above 21 when whatever he made these wagers, whatever they were on. He did not seem super concerned about the severity of it, but obviously there has to be a ruling. He can't play until they rule. So, like, if he's still waiting, just like in the baseball situation, Iowa can't play him, and then because if he does get suspended, then you have to forfeit those games. I know we've been over this before, but for those new, it is a serious situation in that sense. And then could there be others? Potentially, yeah. We don't know. There are others, but we don't know who they are for sure, and just have to wait and see on that. So there might be a guy that just doesn't show up week one, and we'll see how they deal with it. But it does seem like, and I can't remember, when did the Iowa State stuff break? Was that Friday or Thursday? Thursday, right?
It was later in the week.
Yeah, it was Thursday because media day was yesterday. Yeah, it was Thursday.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I mean, Iowa State's just getting kind of hammered right now. They've lost 5 starters from last year's team to the gambling. Now, will they all be out? Probably, based on the stuff we've seen, at least the first couple weeks, which is when Iowa fans care about it. So it's a much, I guess I'll put it this way, Tyler, and for everything that kind of went down in May with the gambling and investigation coming out, saying there's 26 current athletes at Iowa, 15 at Iowa State. in football for both schools, you're thinking, oh boy, how bad is this going to be for Iowa? I mean, if it's just quote unquote Noah Shannon, Aaron Blom, and Jack Johnson, to an extent, you feel like Iowa's getting off a lot easier than Iowa State is at this point. So overall, to me, not as big of a story as it is in Ames.
And I'll add this. I don't want to spend too much more time talking about the gambling and stuff, but part of the thing that makes it so difficult is just kind of the uncertainty about it, right? We don't know a lot about the situation, and it doesn't seem like Kirk Ferentz really does either, because when we talked to him back at Big Ten Media Days, he basically said he wasn't aware of any allegations of Iowa players betting on their own games. And we have known now since then there are allegations about multiple Iowa and former or current players. There are allegations about them betting on games that they were a part of the Iowa program for. So that just shows that basically Kirk Ferentz is probably also in the dark with some of this too, which the uncertainty just makes the situation more complicated. I don't know how to segue into this, but let's talk about I want to talk about linebackers. Nick Jackson and Jay Higgins, and obviously the linebacker is one of the kind of departures that Iowa has to fill this season, with Seth Benson and Jack Campbell gone, and really kind of a big part of Iowa's defense. And but Nick Jackson transferred from Virginia. Jay Higgins was kind of waited his turn at Iowa for an opportunity like this. They were playing with each other at linebacker today. And I thought there was also, too, if I recall correctly, time where we've heard Kyler Fisher's name a little bit, but there was a time where all three of them were on the field at the same time, which I thought was interesting, because he's another guy that could be an option to kind of plug in at linebacker. But I thought it was interesting that those three, and maybe those are they want those three guys on the field because they're the best defensive players that they have, and they're trying to fit them in. So I thought that was interesting. Of you assume that Nick Jackson and Jay Higgins and then throwing Kyler Fisher are kind of emerging to help fill that lost production. But the fact that, if I remember correctly, that those three were on the field at the same time.
Definitely seems like those are the top three. Carson Shire, promising linebacker, excuse me, was one of those out with injury today. So we know Jaden Harrell's kind of in that mix, but I think you're right. The top three are going to be Higgins, Jackson, Fisher, with Higgins and Jackson your primary two guys. And it sounds like Jackson's really doing well. I know Kirk Ferentz kind of undersold him a little bit yesterday, said he's kind of drinking through the fire hose or whatnot. Not literally. I don't. That would be torture, but I think he's gonna be fine. I think they're gonna be fine there. Let's just do a couple more. Like, anyone who stood out, I'm gonna go with Brian Allen, defensive end, redshirt freshman. Boy, he was like living in the backfield today. Kirk Ferentz gave him kind of the Seth Anderson shout out that, hey, this is his best day. Maybe when the lights come on, he's a little bit better. Which tells you, this hasn't been prevalent all camp. And, I thought he looked great. It's what you want to see. Iowa needs depth there, defensive end. They're going to need it next year. You want to see that stuff developing. Frankly, I thought Deontay Craig in his limited reps was really good as well on the D-line. Anyone else that stood out to you today, Tyler, before we get to our 3-word headlines?
Max White, running back. He had a nice run kind of down the sideline, broke it, that bounced it outside. So he was kind of another younger guy. I thought, I can't remember if he did anything else outside of that, but I think that was one of the kind of earlier, bigger plays of the day. So.
Yeah. And I'm going to give Torrey Taylor a shout too. I mean, his punting accuracy was exquisite. I mean, he was dropping every single punt. Like, it would like bounce and like go out like inside the 1, or somebody would down it or catch it like at the 8. That was like a bad kick, like his directional stuff. He said he's really been working on that a lot. So we'll see if Torrey can be take that next step. Even he's probably gonna be first team preseason All-America at punter, and he looks good. So give a shout out to the punter. We did some 3-word headlines today, Tyler. This will be kind of your first run through these, but this will be a post-game staple as well. Not a million responses like we get in games, but people didn't watch this really, other than those who were there. So let's get into some of them. Brandon Walker starts us off. Season disaster averted. I would say so. Honestly. Austin Rickardson, hope is fragile. And here's one from Mo Sislak. I don't think it's actually him from The Simpsons, but it says, "Where's Spencer Petras?" There were some funny GIFs and tweets in that 1 hour between 1:17 and 2:17 where people were starting to say, "Oh my gosh, is Spencer Petras going to come back now off the injury list and be Iowa's savior at quarterback?" Tyler.
Yeah, can I give my headline? My 3-word. Mine was, "I am sunburnt." I don't think it honestly it isn't too bad, but I had it like SPF 30. But I was reapplying because the thing was it was cooking. It was cooking in the
It was
stands.
hot out there, man.
Yeah, especially like if you're near the turf or on the turf, like it heats up. But I also had a bucket hat, like I said, that's why my hair is kind of crazy. But they provided water, which I was thankful for. But it was yeah, that was my headline. Between yesterday and today, yeah, we've been in the sun a lot.
Tim McMahon says bubble wrap Cade. Joe Williams, soft tissue injuries. Patrick, the Hawkeye high priest who has a photo of Jesus in Hawkeye gear, says Cade is fine. And then Heavens FX, who does some great work on Twitter, says heartwarming to heart stopping. So you get the kids captains, the children's hospital, patients come out to midfield, meet with the Kirk, meet with the team, and then heart stopping, certainly a 1:17 p.m. that the time that goes down in infamy. Just no Walter Cronkite. It was all in all, I think you're gonna just kind of gasp a sigh of relief today. I'm just looking at Twitter right now. Cade McNamara is trending, so this was a big story today at Kinnick, Tyler. The only open practice we get to see, basically, and QB1 went down. So disaster averted, as some of these headliners said.
Yeah, well, I was gonna add because when you were talking about Kirk Ferentz saying like, "Oh, the guys when the lights come on, like maybe they like playing." Well, I was just trying to think of like if I'm starting to pick up. I don't know if they're like Ferentzisms or like little phrases he likes to say, but like because at Big Ten Media Days he was making a lot of baseball and basketball metaphors. So
Yeah, he will do that. Baseball, especially, yes.
So I was just trying to think if I'm starting to pick up on, I guess, some of the, I don't know, maybe that because you were saying about what he said about Nick Jackson that he's drinking out of the fire hose. Maybe that's his way of saying that he's going to be really good. So I don't.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we went a little long here on this Hawk Central pod. The plan is, obviously we'll have the radio show next week, but from now until game week, we don't really have media availability. This was the big rush. This is the informational rush. Tyler and I, we both did like 3 straight hours of interviews on Friday, and we have a lot of stories kind of building up in our notebooks. So that's kind of it's kind of like, hibernating for the winter. You eat a bunch before you go into the deep sleep. We got a lot more stocked up. We got a lot of content coming. We're going to kind of roll that out here the next couple weeks. And before you know it, folks, it's going to be game week against Utah State. I mean, that's like, so today's August 11th. Good chance we'll get a depth chart, a week 1 depth chart, either 13 days or 16 days from now, depending when they send the game notes. So we'll have maybe a better idea then, like who's available week 1, who's not. I guess maybe what folks are going to probably watch the Hawkeye football account and see if they can find Cade McNamara in videos, right? Like if they see him
Yeah.
throwing, it's just going to be like celebration, 12-0 back on, all this stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, I was also gonna mention because I mentioned it in the radio show on Wednesday, but so I got to try out the hot dog gun, or the hot dog launcher.
Yeah, Der Wiener Schlinger,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
well, I will say the first. So I shot it twice. This was on Saturday or Friday. This was on Friday. First time it went like a total of 15 feet, maybe. But I think, look, I'll take this for the team. I think it was a user error. I think I'll take that one. I think it was on me. Next one thing went flying up in the stands. So no, so basically it's a hot dog and they wrap it in it's like paper and then they put it in the like a little chute or whatever. So it's basically like like a t-shirt gun except it's hot dogs. And they were shooting it off today. So looks like it works. And also I'll say cuz being close to the field today, Seth Wallace is intense. And I'm not gonna repeat some of the stuff he said because I don't know if it's not PG. I'll just put it that way. But it was interesting to hear him. He's hard on he was hard on the linebackers and in their drills, and he was intense. So I thought, as someone that hasn't really like observed these coaches up close on, like, I don't know if this is like new information to you. I'm guessing not. But anyways, that's just what
I'm
I
surprised
thought.
you didn't hear Phil Parker.
The only thing I remember from him was he told Cooper DeJean to like get guys to move back on the sideline. Like that was what Cooper DeJean was supposed to be
All right, so
responsible
Phil was
for.
playing nice today. Okay.
Yeah. But no, anyways, I just wanted to throw that out there as well as something I observed.
Yeah. One of the cool interviews that I was able to do, and others did too, so it's not just exclusive, but John Budmeyer talked yesterday. First time we've heard from him since he came aboard. I mean, the highlights really are, he just loves being here. He loves being part of the Hawkeyes. And this is former Badger quarterback, former Badgers assistant, wearing Hawkeye gear, trying to help help Brian Ferentz in the quarterback's room. That's just one of the several stories kind of working on here in coming weeks, coming days, coming weeks. But we're excited. I'm excited to embark on this season with Tyler. I think we're off to a great start. And thanks for doing the video clips today, man. I think a lot of fans out there really appreciated it, and appreciate you taking a sunburn for the team.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll also this was another little nugget from media days, and I'll just say, like, we've been running around so much the last 2 days. Like I'm making sure I'm just getting my socks on the right way. So, but
drinking from a fire hose, right?
Yeah, pretty much. That means I'm gonna be really good, I guess.
Yeah,
But Nick Jackson speaks Chinese, so I thought that was interesting. I don't know that many people that speak Chinese around here. So, anyways, he gave a little sample. He said, I can't even remember, to be honest, but he said something about the Hawkeyes, and I posted it on Twitter. So
there you go. Follow Tyler Tachman on Twitter. Thanks, folks, for tuning in. This was a fun weekend. Always a busy one for us, and hopefully we gave you guys some good content and more to come. Promise. And we'll be on the Hawk Central Radio Show on Wednesday. Thanks for tuning in. For Tyler Tachman, I'm Chad Leistikow. Talk to you soon.